Thank you for coming, and we welcome you to this exciting session. To help frame and open the session, I'm going to invite His Excellency Kyon Ki-ro, Deputy Minister for Trade Negotiations of the Republic of Korea, to provide some opening remarks. Before I invite him to the stage, I'd like to acknowledge Korea and Chile as co-coordinators of investment facilitation for development at the WTO, along with Cambodia, Cameroon, and the EU as co-facilitators. And we really thank them for their leadership of this topic at the WTO. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Well, Excellencies, distinguished representatives of governments and international organizations, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to warmly welcome you to the WTO Public Forum session on the Investment Facilitation Agreement in the Digital Age. Let me begin by expressing my sincere appreciation to our co-organizers, the permanent missions of Korea, Chile, the EU, and Cambodia, as well as our partners from the World Economic Forum, the International Trade Center, and the G20 Trade and Investment Research Network. Since 2017, investment facilitation has remained one of the central topics at the Public Forum, having been featured in 8 sessions to date, with the only exception being 2020, when the Public Forum was canceled due to the pandemic. Today, we gather to reflect on how IFD agreement can be utilized in this new digital era. Allow me now to introduce our distinguished moderator and speakers for today's discussion. We are privileged to have Mr. Matthew Stevenson, Head of the Investment and Services of the World Economic Forum, as our moderator. Joining him as panelists are Mr. Andrea Sura, Deputy Executive Director of WIPA, and Philip partner of PwC, and Ms. Annabel Gonzalez, Vice President for Countries and Regional Integration at IDB, and Mr. Matthias Urutigoiti, Chief of the Office for Latin America and Caribbean at ITC, and Dr. Doriana Alexeyev, Senior Researcher at IDOS. All of them are leaders and experts at the forefront of digital transformation, investment, climate reform, and development cooperation. I'm confident their insights will enrich today's discussions and lead to meaningful outcomes. We are living through a transformative era where digital technologies are reshaping our economies and societies. Artificial intelligence, data-driven governance, and one-stop electronic platforms are improving the investor experience, enhancing administrative efficiency, and strengthening global connectivity and innovation. The Investment Facilitation for Development Agreement, launched through informal discussions in 2017 and concluded at MC last year, is now supported by 127 member parties working towards its incorporation into WTO legal framework. This agreement provides not only improvements to investment procedures, but also forward-looking institutional foundation for the digital era, including provisions on electronic publication of information, online submission of applications and payments, and streamlined approval processes. Equally important, the agreement contains provisions that help developing countries harness these digital tools effectively by strengthening capacity and ensuring inclusiveness. This makes the agreement a truly innovative step that aligns investment facilitation with both development and digital transformation. Korea has actively contributed to capacity building and digital transformation, drawing on its long-standing digital governance and e-government. Building on this experience, Korea has conducted pre-needs assessments with Morocco, Kazakhstan, and Nigeria, introducing the framework of the IFD agreement and sharing our practices in digital investment administration. These initiatives also explore pragmatic solutions to address policy changes faced by partner countries. Looking ahead, Korea will continue to work within the framework of open plurilateralism to ensure that IFD agreement becomes the new benchmark for investment cooperation in the digital age. We will also remain committed to supporting its swift incorporation into WTO legal framework so that its benefits can be fully realized and shared by all member countries. Distinguished participants, it's my sincere hope that today's discussion will serve as a solid foundation for the effective implementation of the agreement, especially by leveraging digital tools to advance investment facilitation. Let me once again express my gratitude to our co-organizers and all participants for your commitment and contributions. We wish you a successful and productive session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for helping set the tone and helping frame today's discussion. Before we go ahead and get started with this exciting panel, please allow me to just share two more points. The first is that for you who were not here yesterday with us, we had, thanks to the WTO Secretariat, a high-level dialogue just on the eve of the WTO Public Forum on the topic of implementing the Investment Facilitation for Development Agreement. And in addition to remarks by the Minister for Trade of Korea, heads of the WTO, the UNCTAD, ITC, and the World Economic Forum, in addition to senior representatives from the World Bank, OECD, and our very own Annabelle Gonzalez, who's on the stage with us today, who now wears an IDB hat, but has worn many hats before. And I think this high-level session yesterday showed the political commitment, the support of the international community to help implement the IFD agreement. And the second point I'd like to share is about how there have been a number of sessions on the IFD agreement before, as Deputy Minister Roh said, but none quite during the times where we find ourselves today, where there's this technology revolution taking place. And what is exciting is that the IFD agreement contains a provision, an article, Article 18, on leveraging information and communications technologies for investment facilitation. So there's a built-in mechanism in the IFD agreement to leverage digital tools for investment facilitation. And so when you put these two together, the strong political commitment of the international community to implement the IFD agreement, and you combine it with Article 18 to help support digital tools for investment facilitation, you have a recipe for investment facilitation in the digital age, which is what we're going to talk about today. So before we open it up to Q&A, and we hope that all of you will think about good questions for our panel, comments from your experience, I'd like to invite our panelists to each share their perspective on investment facilitation in the digital age. Andreas from WIPA will give us the big picture. He works with investment promotion agencies all around the world on this topic, so he really sees what's happening globally. Then Philip will share a little bit of the perspective of the private sector and how they really care about digital tools to facilitate investment. He'll also talk not only about traditional tools, digital tools, but new digital tools, as he wrote a paper for the G20 on leveraging AI by investment promotion agencies. Then Annabelle will build a bridge to the Investment Facilitation for Development Agreement and how it can be leveraged to support digital tools for investment facilitation. Matthias will talk a little bit about the ITC's work, really doing this in practice and some of the findings that they've had in terms of the opportunities to leverage the IFD agreement to support digital tools for investment facilitation. And Zoriana will close it off with her excellent research at the German Institute for Development and Sustainability on the benefits if the IFD agreement are implemented, including provisions on digital tools. Together, this panel will decode and demystify digital investment facilitation. Andreas, yours.
and first allow me to thank the organizers and, for inviting me to speak and to be part of this very illustrious panel and to be allowed to start. As you mentioned, for many years investment promotion agencies were mainly seen as promoters. What they did was they showcased opportunities, they highlighted incentives, basically they persuaded investors to choose their location. That is still a very vital role of investment promotion agencies, also henceforth the name investment promotion. But in recent years and nowadays, investors are asking quite clear questions beyond glossy brochures and beyond this promotional aspect. They basically ask, how quickly can I start? How easy will it be for me to, will the process be? And what will the costs be? So, in other words, it's not only about investing in a location, but also how easy it is to invest in a location. Let me give you an example. 10 years ago, the presidency that currently holds the presidency of Viper, Invest India, when an investor came and knocked on their door, they usually took 2 to 3 days to collect, basically answers to provide the required licenses and approvals. That was a very slow and uncertain process. Fast forward 10 years nowadays, Invest India has something called the Know Your Approvals module, where investors go online, ask a couple of questions, they will ask a couple of questions, and within 8 to 10 minutes, they get clear answers. They know, they get direct links to apply, and also how much it will cost them. So, within these 10 years, due to the use of digital tools, the process from a very uncertain process that took a couple of days now only takes a couple of minutes. And all around the world, a number of IPAs are pioneering these digital facilitation tools. Allow me just to give you a few examples. The Bangladesh Investment Development Authority, for example, runs a one-stop service portal integrating more than 40 approvals into one single window. The Kenya Investment Authority provides e-procedures portal showing investors step by step what documents and costs are involved in each approval. The General Investment Authority and Free Zones of Egypt, GAFI, has digitized incorporation, licensing and even land allocation, supported by e-signatures and secured payments. A frontrunner in digitalization, Invest Estonia, offers site visits, benchmarking dashboards and digital advisors, all designed to make decisions faster and reduce administrative burdens. And finally, Business Finland equally provides an online platform that connects investors directly with project opportunities and local ecosystems. Also, the host of our upcoming World Investment Conference in Sharjah in the UAE, they have an AI tool that allows to get a trade license now in 3 minutes. That's completely a contrast to what used to be a couple of years ago. So what this helps is it helps to build trust, and I think that's also perhaps what then my next speaker will reflect a bit more from the investor side. But it reduces delays and it gives investors the confidence that they need that their projects will be taken care of. And equally for government, it means that it means more high-quality investments, faster job creation, and a stronger competitiveness. Perhaps with this I can close for now, and I would like to hand over to Philip.
Thank you, Andreas. I think what's very important in your examples are that there were examples of developing economies and developed economies. So this conversation is relevant for all. And I wonder if this is something our panel wants to get into at different times. There might be more foundational digital tools and more maybe aspirational digital tools. We can start with the foundational and move to the aspirational. Perhaps there's a spectrum which requires the support, of course, to move along that journey. But thank you for sharing the global perspective. Philip, we're very excited to hear your perspective.
Thank you, thank you first of all for hosting me on this distinguished panel. I want to build on one aspect that Andreas mentioned earlier, would have loved to have those tools ready when I started working on investment facilitation during Lisbon Treaty 2009, with the competence going from the member countries to the EU, and all the questions that were there about most favored nation treatment and the clauses around investor protection, breach of contract, and so on and so forth. So today I think we're in the amazing position that technology meets the opportunity of investment promotion much better, to both use it but also as an investment target in itself. And I want to structure this around three main topics that I see when working with both investment promotion agencies on the one side, but also with private sector on the other side, be it in infrastructure investments, be it in SME investments, be it in M&A activities and others. These three things are trust, and we heard a lot today about predictability. I think there's a slight nuance between trust and predictability. I'll come to that in a moment. I want to speak a little bit about collaboration, both internally, externally, and more broadly in the IPA ecosystem. Wipa, one very good example of that. And then lastly, technology as an enabler to do that from an investor service delivery standpoint, and also with a view to increasing conversion rates, because that's what it's ultimately all about. I work with so many IPAs that come and say, I don't understand, who should I go to? My minister is traveling to country X. Who are the companies that are relevant His Excellency should meet? And that's not traditionally been an easy task, because we go into market capitalization, we go into current expansion of those companies in certain sectors. But again, some of them you might be attracting easier from country A than from country B. So trust, collaboration, and technology. On the trust side, previously, and I just mentioned this on the BITs, companies used to look for a risk-reward pattern that's mainly driven by financials, right? So when we looked at different opportunities, we helped them identify, how do we structure incentives? What do you need as incentive in order for this deal to actually happen? And how does it contribute to both the host economy and the home economy from spillover and spillback point of view, employment, GDP impact, and so on and so forth? Today, the picture that we're seeing is very different, and the implications of that are also different. They want to trust that where they invest, that investment is well catered for in terms of many things. The 3-minute license Andreas was referring to. Look, I work a lot in the region, and I'm based in the GCC as well. So the 3-minute promise typically is a promise on 3 minutes, which is true, right? But 3 minutes upon submission of all the required documents. So, and that sometimes is still a challenge. You need stamps, you need this, you need this. So today investors ask for more than just incentives, because the playing field has also been undifferentiated. So if I see investors and they see IPX promoting their country as an equity story, country X, we have 3-minute license, we have 5-minute housing, we have 10-minute car rent. I'm just exaggerating, but the point is, the questions are more around, where do I send my kids to school? What's the quality of life? How is the air quality? So there's a lot more on that risk-reward pattern that used to be financially driven, that is now a lot more comprehensive. ESG, social obligations the investor has both in home and host country. So that's changing a lot, and that requires trust. And the predictability and trust difference that I sort of see a little bit. Predictability comes with confidence, like I know that this regulatory framework will allow me to do X, Y, and Z as a business activity. Trust is sometimes an element that requires both to jump a little bit earlier and jump a little bit further than before. One without the other is probably going to be difficult. But the point here is the differentiation for IPAs, for the investor, is critical. My investors, they don't know, should I go to country X or country Y? Because both promise me in the honeymoon phase everything I can imagine, and then reality is sometimes different, or at least I don't know where to go. So that's on the trust side. On the collaboration side, the 3-minute license is only possible if entities within the target country of investment collaborate, but also that collaboration should span, and the IFD a good anchor for that in terms of collaboration as well. If there's proper data exchange, and data transparency, and accuracy, and timeliness. So when the investors look into certain statistical data of countries, what they find is either outdated or not necessarily always reliable or matching up with what they would like to see. So that collaboration between IPAs to say, look, some of you IPAs have an outbound mandate as well. You need to facilitate ODI, be it through political risk guarantees or other activities. You need to make sure as part of your home economic promotion that the investor goes abroad. So why not help each other identify the investors and kind of work together towards better impact of the incentives we're both spending as well to lift the investor above that threshold where we can attract them. And in order to do that, lastly, technology has become not only important, but probably paramount and critical, and serves multiple purposes today. Andreas gave a few examples. There's many, many more. But the ones I want to pick out are mainly driven by the things that the investor expects. Many IPAs have something called a red carpet service. And red carpet service to me comes with a 6-star element, a 5-star element, but not with a 2 or 3-star element. I think technology is the unlock for a lot of the sort of budget constrained and also maybe capacity constrained IPAs to level the playing field a little bit and benefit from that, I would say, democratization of technology to an extent. And the second one is around, and I think Canada has something, other countries also have something, I don't want to pick out one specifically, but basically reading the investor's mind. I mean, there's evidence enough that 50% of all FDI we're attracting is typically from investors that are already in the country. So the new investor, the acquisition cost is much higher for me. So if I focus on reading their minds and I want to give a little tourism story in that. So a new tourism resort opened, and a friend of mine and myself, we went and we wanted to go on a hike tour. By the time we reached the gate, the entry to the hiking path, there were already 2 bikes and water there, just because we had spoken to the reception in the morning that we wanted to go hiking. So I don't know how they did it, maybe radios or whatever, but it happened. And again, if we know behaviors and behavioral analytics, obviously a big part of what AI can do, is a critical unlock for those countries to maximize the impact of FDI, but also to increase investor relationship, because I still feel, despite all the technology, that investor attraction and also working with investors, it's a lot of gut feeling and a lot of emotional intelligence required. And just a very brief, if I still have 30 seconds, I worked with an investor from Europe into the MENA region, and 2 countries were shortlisted, and the numbers added up fine. It all looked very, very similar, so there was no real upside for country X or country Y. And the response was, this one, I don't feel it. So it was a very emotional decision, and in a lot of cases, MNCs may be different because of the governance requirements and so on, but a lot of family-owned business, substantial mid-cap, multi-billion-dollar companies, family-owned, very lean decision-making, they decide a lot with what they feel, if all other things being equal. So the relationship, and I hope technology will help enable that relationship for IPAs, but also for the investors to read their minds and deliver 5-star services, is one of the things for the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. You've been doing this in the trenches, so to speak, for a long time. So we appreciate your real-world examples, which I think is what we all benefit from. One of the things you said, which I think is particularly interesting, is the whole collaboration between investment promotion agencies on facilitating inward investment and outward investment, two-way investment. And you can think of some technology, digital tools to do this kind of matching, because maybe the inward investment attractors could say, these are the sectors we're interested in. The outward investors could say, these are the sectors we're interested in investing outward. And there could be some digital platform tools,
indeed,
for instance, which would make the link to the IFD agreement, which has coordination mechanisms as one of its provisions, could be supported by this. Thank you. And when we get back to you in the course, we'll hear more about AI. I think that's something that we could be really interested about, how AI fits into this. Annabelle, you were DDG at the WTO, civilities at the and in your former DDG hat, you were responsible for the joint statement initiatives, including investment facilitation development. So we'd love to hear your perspective on all of this, including your current work at the IDB on helping move the agreement forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Matthew, for this kind invitation. I'm delighted to be here with this panel to talk about the Investment Facilitation Agreement for Development. If anything, let me say, because in a previous life, many years ago, I led the investment promotion agency of my country, Costa Rica, and I would really have liked to have a facilitation agreement for development, as you were saying, Philip, at the time. So it's great that we finally have. It's really an agreement that represents a milestone in multi-lateral trade cooperation by establishing disciplines that make investment procedures more transparent, more predictable, and efficient. It directly addresses bottlenecks that have long constrained both investors and governments alike. What is especially, I think, forward-looking about this agreement, it's of digital tools as a central driver of reform. Provisions in the agreement that call for online information portals or electronic submission of applications and digital processing of approvals are not simply technical details. They are enablers of inclusion, of efficiency, and trust. They lower costs for investors, they reduce opportunities for discretion, and they help governments serve citizens and businesses more effectively. This digital dimension, I believe, is particularly relevant at a moment when foreign direct investment in many developing countries is declining, threatening progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. To reverse this trend, it's important for governments to create a more enabling environment for investment, and digitalization can be decisive in this effort. There are already noteworthy experiences in many parts of the world, and let me share a couple of examples from Latin America and the Caribbean. Single investment windows in countries such as Colombia and Costa Rica, supported by the Inter-American Development Bank, I have to say, have shown how centralizing and digitizing procedures can simplify processes, enhance transparency, and overall improve the investor experience. I think that's something that's very relevant, that at the end of the day, it may come down to a gut feeling. So everything that can be done to improve the investor experience is absolutely critical. Beyond providing a one-stop shop for investment procedures, these platforms have relied on comprehensive mapping and redesign of processes, ensuring that inefficiencies and redundancies are eliminated. In the case of Costa Rica, for example, reduction in processing times has been reported to be on average between 50% and 90%. Emerging technologies also hold promise. Artificial investment to guide investors through procedures, blockchain to bring integrity and traceability to permits, and data analytics to help governments identify bottlenecks and continuously improve their services. The IFDA provides the framework to make such innovations more widely accessible. Provisions on transparency, streamlining, and digitalization of procedures, coupled with capacity-building mechanisms, can enable developing countries to roll out these solutions more quickly and more effectively. In this context, the needs assessments play a strategic role. They allow each country to take stock of its readiness, self-identify its priorities, and chart a realistic reform pathway while highlighting areas where international support and cooperation are most needed. In partnership with the WTO and the ITC, the IDB is currently supporting 8 needs assessments across Latin America and the Caribbean. In Ecuador, in Guatemala, in Honduras. I see my great friend Ambassador Dacio Castillo from Honduras, where we've been doing some very interesting work, in Belize, in Guyana, in Jamaica, in Barbados, and Suriname. And a clear message has emerged. Digitalization of investment facilitation is both a common challenge and a cross-cutting priority. The institutional, financial, and technical constraints countries face are strikingly similar. And this creates an opportunity for regional cooperation to share experiences, pool knowledge, and align efforts for greater collective impact. The digital age offers unprecedented tools to reimagine how governments and investors interact, and the IFD framework and the needs assessments are a useful tool to chart the pathway. For the Inter-American Development Bank, this agreement is a vehicle to foster stronger institutions, inclusive private sector-led growth, and sustainable development. We stand ready to continue partnering with countries and the region and the international community and the private sector and all of your organizations to ensure that investment facilitation in the digital area delivers tangible benefits to all. And I'm going to take advantage that I am holding the mic to make a small announcement that if you want to learn more about what is going on in IFDA in Latin America and the Caribbean, I invite you to the next session at 5 p.m. in CR, where we will be talking about that, and more importantly, government representatives will also share their experiences. Thank you very much, Matthew.
Thank you so much, Annabelle. There's no better person to share her perspective, given all the hats you've worn, including one, well, thank you for reminding us you were the boss of the Investment Promotion Agency of Costa Rica. So you've seen it from the other side. You've also been responsible for these topics at the World Bank, so you've seen the development assistance side, in addition to your WTO hat and your current IDB hat. It's I think all those perspectives coming together are very helpful. You mentioned collaboration with the ITC, and now we have Matthias from the ITC, who's the Chief of Technical Assistance in Latin America and the Caribbean, who can share a little bit of the practical side of implementing these investment facilitation needs assessments and what he's found in terms of respect to digital tools.
Thank you, Matthew. Excellencies, colleague. Implementation of the IFD agreement presents a unique opportunity to use digital technologies to facilitate investment. In many countries, governments are already rolling out various e-government portals, ranging from business to registration to licensing and taxation. And some of them we heard from Andreas, and also Annabelle mentioned some of the very good examples that we have in the region. These portals can significantly enhance efficiency of public services, increase transparency, streamline administrative processes, reducing red tape, which all contribute to making investment faster, easier, and safer. The IFD agreement encourages countries to digitize investment-related administrative processes and make use of digital tools to facilitate investment. Implementation of its key provisions, such as the ones related to digital, such as single information portals, the use of ICT and e-government, electronic signature and authentication tools, electronic submission of applications, online payments for application fees, digitalization of authorization procedures, as well as domestic supplier databases, can help not only to reduce time and cost for compliance with procedures, but also help to link domestic suppliers with multinational companies, therefore spreading the benefits of FDI more evenly across society. ITC has been working together with IDB and other partner agencies to conduct investment facilitation assessment in several countries across the region and in Latin America in particular. In almost all assessments, the importance of online portals has been emphasized by stakeholders. However, countries have also indicated significant technical, financial, or capacity challenges for effective implementation of these digital solutions. Similar challenges have also been highlighted in the implementation of the Trade Facilitation Agreement, where ITC has supported over 50 countries in implementing the TFA, including developing trade facilitation portals. What we find through our technical assistance initiatives is that the key to success is not in creating or updating the portals, which any qualified IT company can develop in a couple of weeks, but what really takes time is to map out the procedures, to understand the requirements and the workflow, and most importantly, to change the mindset and behavior of the government officials, so that they can contribute their insights and expertise to developing the portal and use the portal on day-to-day basis once it is deployed. And Philip was mentioned the issue of trust and collaboration, and we totally agree with that and how important that is in order to make this agreement work. This requires capacity building on understanding the importance of enhancing transparency, streamlining procedures, improving interagency coordination and collaboration, and reducing red tape and avoiding corruption. This is why the IFD agreement is important. It does not prescribe how portals should be developed, but it does provide guidance on the fundamental principles on why and how to facilitate investment. And it also creates a global benchmark for good practices. This IFD agreement also provides opportunity for tailored technical assistance and capacity building support from the international community, which are especially important for implementing measures classified under Category C, those that require additional time and resources for effective rollout. ITC has been supporting countries on IFD agreement, but we cannot do it alone. Digital portals are usually costly to develop and deploy. It also involves a lot of capacity building and coordination. We look forward to joint efforts with partners, donors, and all stakeholders to support developing countries in these endeavors, so that these digital tools can help countries attract more investment and, importantly, level the playing field for small businesses to take part in global value chains, contributing broadly to inclusive and sustainable development objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthias. Again, coming in from the field to share his real-world perspective. You mentioned supplier databases. And so before I bring in Soraya, I wanted to acknowledge a few key actors in the audience who may want to share their perspective in the course of the Q&A. And first off, Ambassador Boza, of course, of Chile, our co-coordinator, Ambassador Choi of Korea, co-coordinator, thank you for being here and your leadership, and Ambassador Swan of Cambodia. We had the great privilege of the World Economic Forum to work in partnership with Cambodia on the first supplier database with sustainability dimensions, Cambodia showing leadership on this topic to build a supplier database and include sustainability dimensions. And of course acknowledge the EEC that is here and has been working really hard on providing the support necessary, and our WTO Secretariat colleagues, Claudia, Pamela, Angelique, without whom none of this would be possible, and all their hard work that needs to be acknowledged. And of course, GIZ here as well, and UNCTAD that have been doing a lot of this in practice. So feel free, all of those that I mentioned, and everybody in the room, to jump in and ask difficult questions. Repeat difficult questions, because this is a star audit panel, so they can take it. All right, Soraya, we want now to hear your expert insights on the development benefits. Like, why should we do this? What is in it for everybody? Why does this matter?
Thank you so much, Matthew. I'm really happy to have this opportunity to share a couple of empirical research results here with all of you. And given that I'm an economist, I will provide you a couple of statistics to draw a broad picture. How does it look like with digital tools and investment facilitation? So first of all, at IDOS, we developed the Investment Facilitation Index that gives us an opportunity to measure the investment facilitation at country level. This index incorporates over 100 individual measures that are clustered in 6 policy areas and covers around 140 countries. So it gives us, first of all, an opportunity to say what is the reform gap between what is in the IFD agreement and the current state of play in different countries. Now we are talking about digital tools in the investment facilitation agreement, right? So I'll try to focus on that as well. And in the index we have a specific policy area, electronic governance policy area, and it combines all of the measures related to information and communication technologies, single window mechanisms. And it's actually, according to our survey, the second most important policy area after regulatory transparency and predictability. It's not a surprise, right? Everybody on the panel has already mentioned, right? Transparency, predictability, trust, that is one of the most important things for investors. But the second one is e-governance. Now, what does data say? And what is, you've heard a lot of examples, right? But there are some good and some bad news when we look at the data in detail. For example, the good news first, 96% of all economists that we have in our sample have already a national investment website for information purpose. But not all of them provide all of the set of necessary information like relevant details on licensing requirements, fees, screening, and approvals, so there is still a bit of improvement possible. 86% recognize electronic signature as legally valid, also quite a high number, and 73% accept authenticated copies of documents already in their procedures. So those are quite nice numbers, but not all of the measures have such a nice adoption level, right? And good example is single window mechanism. It's rather still less common than the others. In particular, 44% of economists have a single entry point for submitting investment-related applications, but only 27% offer a fully operational single window with electronic processing of all of that applications within one tool. And only 38 ensure regular updates of the single window portal. And maybe another example, 38% of economists, unfortunately, allowed to pay all fees for all mandatory registrations through such a single window portal. When we look at adoption of all of these e-governance measures across all countries in general, we see quite a nice picture, because economies achieve on average 59%, so almost 60% of the possible maximum score. But when we compare the adoption levels across incomes, there we have a but. We can see that low-income countries reach only 47% of the achievements of high-income countries. And there are even examples like Djibouti or Central African Republic where none of these measures has been adopted. So we see a substantial gap here. And this means that actually least developed countries will have to implement quite substantial reforms to implement additional provisions under the Investment Facilitation for Development Agreement. But at the same time, this implies that they have higher potential for benefits. And that's another point I want to highlight here. Our simulation results actually confirm that those benefits are sizable. In particular, the global economic gain, welfare gain for the whole world can reach 1.7%, or easier to understand probably over 800 billion of US dollars if the agreement is fully implemented in all of the countries. Hereby, low and middle income countries benefit the most due to their higher reform gap and due to their higher potential to improve their investment facilitation frameworks. And another result that I would like to highlight is that IFD participation is way more beneficial for countries than free riding. And here just one quick example. For India, the welfare gains are 2.5 times higher if it would join the agreement in comparison of being outside the agreement. So, just to conclude, I would like to emphasize that those substantial gain of over 800 billion US dollars, they are possible only if the agreement is fully and properly implemented on the ground, right? So all of the provisions have to be implemented the way that investors can use those tools, right? And that's why the needs assessments are so important, and that's why it is so important to develop country-specific technical assistance and capacity-building programs to reach this full implementation and to reap the benefits that are possible from the IFD agreement for developing countries in this case, right? Thank you so much. I hope it was not too much with numbers and statistics, sorry.
Thank you, Zorana. No, this is great. Data-driven policy, evidence-based, as we like to say. So just to recap, digital tools are the second most important measure for investors' predictability. So this is really, really important. And yet, across many economies, there's low implementation. So we need to work on this. But if we do implement, if we do work on it, great benefits can come about. So it makes a lot of sense, this chain reaction of why this should be on all of our desks. I'm going to ask my colleagues, maybe Khalid and Alex, with whom I work closely every day, both of whom have deep WTO experience, if they wouldn't mind helping us with the Q&A and steal 2 mics from the panelists. And maybe one gentleman each could go to both sides of the room, and then we can get comments or questions from as many of you as possible. So if you'd like to say anything, it can be a question or a comment, please raise your hand whenever you feel like it. And until people signal that interest, I'm going to ask Philip to say something intelligent about AI, because I know he's written about this for the G20, AI and investment facilitation.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. I think the difficult part is the intelligent bit. AI is okay, but look, again, when I first was presented with the hat of supporting our firm with the AI and I became the AI champion, I'm a bit of a dinosaur. I look younger than I am, so I had to kind of get myself up to speed, and I took this MIT course on AI, and what I found was, in the end, it's still zeros and ones, right? Just a bit smarter than before. And so I started to work on use cases with my clients, and the beauty is that the ask, and especially investors being the clients, is simple. So for example, one of the use cases we developed is, I want to be able to speak to the IPA in my mother tongue. Now, okay, English, no problem. Like a lot of the websites that you're referring to are in English, they're available. The depth of the information may be so and so, you can debate, but eventually it doesn't matter. But they want to speak to someone, and the AI agent that we worked on would just translate. I think those of you who use Samsung phones, they have this new call assist function where you can just speak, and the other side would hear whatever language they would listen to, or vice versa. So that human interaction, AI enabled, is one of the use cases we built. The second one was on investor sentiment. So early pickup of the signs that how does the investor feel? How are they net promoters? Like we used to measure it as a net promoter score, right? Like how likely is it you recommend this garage to your friends and family? No, this was a use case we kind of worked on to identify how can we early detect in various markets the investor sentiment vis-a-vis a target market in different sectors could change. There was a panel about critical minerals before. The world is changing on that, you know, the semiconductor industry and so on. So new markets have come into play that can, with this early detection of AI, actually jump on board with the IPAs and address who's searching for me. Like it's a lot easier to narrow down the funnel of leads that are coming in. The third use case we worked on was in investor services. I mentioned this, or I touched upon it earlier. And investor services really being everything from school applications to helping on housing, all in one agent. So the investor would come and say, I need an agent for, like, or the AI would have an agent that searches house, searches school, puts people on the wait list, or in the best case scenario, not the wait list, but an actual spot in the school, based on hobbies, based on criteria that the family that goes has, or the investor sends, and so on. And the fourth one, and that's maybe more on the sort of big data analytics side. So how can I predict my investor demand in certain areas, and how do I enable supply chain into that? I think, Matthias, you spoke about supply chain earlier, and I think it was also part of an earlier panel. So how do I really activate my local economy into these investments as well, by not only procurement platforms and the likes, but really through the anticipated demand that will come out of a certain investment project if and when it happens. The one that I can think of in addition, and that I'm thinking about and we're working on right now, is kind of optimizing incentives. So if you think about how can I modulate like my financial model with various, almost like Monte Carlo on steroids, if you forgive my salop language. So how can I model with different variants of different types of incentives in different structures, because not all of the countries do necessarily have a tax regime that would enable tax incentives and so on. So how can I model those incentives to give me the biggest biggest value for money as a host country, and how can I combine that through collaboration also with home country incentives of sending the investor abroad as well. So these are some of the use cases that I've seen / we're working on and that investors ask for. But the key is simplicity. It's not difficult questions they ask. They're difficult to answer, unfortunately. But yeah.
Well, thank you for those very, very concrete examples, which I think makes all of this real for us of what we're trying to achieve here when we talk about digital tools to facilitate investment. Article 18 of the IFD agreement that provides, the mechanism to support those capacity building. It's things like that. It's real world examples of real world problems and their solutions. I'd love to get comments now from the audience. Claudia?
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you to all the speakers. So I'm Claudia Locatelli from the WTO Secretariat, and as Matthew mentioned, yesterday we had these partnerships, really strengthening partnerships to enhance help for needs assessments and beyond for actual implementation. So my question is, how could basically the private sector contribute more and better to, in particular, to enable tools? I mean, would it be envisageable to have the private sector contribute more to, for instance, set up single windows in certain countries, contribute financially, contribute also know-how very much? How could such basically a partnership potentially be put in place? Thank you.
Maybe let's collect a couple questions or comments, maybe 2, 3, 4, unless there are no time. Ambassador Boza. Okay, so Ambassador Boza, Hene, the lady in purple, and then we'll go to the panel. Thanks.
Oh my God. Well, thank you very much, Matthew, for giving me the floor, and thank you to our distinguished panel for this event. I will take advantage that I'm here right now as part of the audience to make a question that very often I listen from others, and it's a question directed to Soraya. You have mentioned all the figures about how this can have an impact on GDP, welfare, etc., etc. So, but often what I hear from others, I will not mention anyone, is that it's not like that. This agreement is not so impactful for development because you need a lot of internal adjustments for having the gains of this. So from your perspective that you have studied the numbers from a very long time, what would you respond to that kind of question? Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Boza, and thank you for your leadership on IFD. Ambassador Swan, please, and then Hene, and then the lady in purple.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor to ask, and also thanks for the wonderful panelists who spend their time to share with us their experiences. I have a question with regard on the backdrop that we are currently discussing. Before we coming into a digital ecosystem, we need to have an enabler. The enabler is infrastructure and human resource. Again, in the Article 18, just provide the capacity building, but how can we help some of least developing country to be able to build their infrastructure and digital ecosystem in order to develop a single window on investment facilitation? Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Swan, and thank you also for your leadership on this topic. Hene? Hene from the European Commission.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, Hene Leht from the EU delegation here in Geneva. Well, first of all, thank you for this very interesting panel. I think it's very clear that it's very difficult to overestimate the central role of digitalization, investment facilitation, as we heard from all the panelists today. And the EU certainly believes that combined with other investment facilitation measures, such as, for example, designating focal points for investors or lead agency for coordinating involved government authorities that were all mentioned today, this could, together with digitalization, it could really deliver long-lasting and very positive impact for the investment. Here, I would just like to add something that we mentioned a few times yesterday at the partnership dialogue that Claudia mentioned. This is the ownership on all levels of government to be committed to this. So this is something we think is very important, together with the whole of government approach that we also touched upon yesterday. And here, the backing of an international agreement such as IFDA would come to play and would play a very important role in materializing all those objectives. And therefore, we really hope that this agreement can be anchored into the WTO rulebook very soon. In order to ensure that needs assessment and early implementation can deliver one day sustained and long-term commitments. So mentioning needs assessment, this is something that EU attaches lots of importance to, and we have been lucky to help with some of them, and we are always looking into how can we help more. And this is my question, and it's a little bit relates to Claudia's question, that what kind of technical assistance would be needed to deliver the digital tools in investment facilitation? So perhaps you can take this question together with Claudia. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hene. And even though Hene is from the European Union delegation, she's also from Estonia. And of course, we know Estonia is one of the world's leaders on digital tools. So just to acknowledge that. The lady in purple, no? Okay. So let me just recap. How do we get more investors involved? How do we actually, is this agreement useful, and are the benefits real? What are the real enablers that we need first for infrastructure, human resources, technical assistance that is needed, and ownership? How can we make sure there's ownership at the economy level? So I think it would be great to hear from all panelists, whatever opinion perspectives they'd like to provide. I'd like to invite them all to react to anything that they would like to say. So we'll give them each a chance. Whoever is most keen to speak first, just signal, but we'll invite everyone to say something. Maybe Annabelle first. Thanks.
Sure, thank you very much, Matthew. And I'd like to take the question from Ambassador about the enablers of investment, of digital tools and investment facilitation, because I think that's a very important question, particularly for developing countries. I also think that the investment facilitation agreement can be leveraged for countries to engage in the necessary reforms and to look for the investments that are needed to further to improve that enabling environment. And that would include the following. One, the regulatory framework. IFDA, of course, can be critical. I think it can also leverage, it can also drive other reforms that may be relevant from the digital perspective. So that would be one. A second one is infrastructure. And you mentioned this is absolutely critical. And this is not only about access to connectivity, for example, it's about cost, it's about speed. And here I have to say, though you and I are in different regions of the world, I am sure that the Asian Development Bank is also working in this regard, because in Latin America, the Inter-American Development Bank is actually leveraging this agreement to work with countries to improve connectivity, because this is absolutely critical. You also mentioned another very important factor, which is skills development. This is, again, a critical enabler in the digital area, and this would apply also to the digital tools. And there are two other issues that I believe are important, or one that is particularly important here, which is also access to finance, which relates to all the rest. But I'd say that from what I have seen in the multilateral development banks, and certainly in the one that I represent here today, there is great interest in using this agreement to drive investments and to drive reforms that will improve the enablers in the digital space. Thank you.
Soraya, would you like to come in and answer the question of whether this is going to make a difference?
Well, it will, definitely. And to be honest, that's a very good question, because I always also get that question. So, from my perspective as economist, when we talk about trade and investment and FDI, that trade barriers are quite low nowadays, right? But we see also at the last couple of years the rise of protectionism more and more. That means that actually investment gets more and more important, because that's what the countries try to achieve, right? Increasing tariffs or some non-tariff barriers, they want to push for more investment and production or providing services within those countries. And then if the countries would also reduce those barriers to investors that cost them a lot, like time-consuming registrations, finding suppliers within the country, and so on and so forth, which is all in the IFD agreement, that would strongly reduce those barriers to invest in those countries, meaning that more investors will come and set up an affiliate in that country, which will definitely help to grow the economies where this investment takes place, right? Employment, and hopefully sustainability, if we also have sustainability aspects in the supplier databases, right? So all of it is connected. We cannot look at it, divided, right? But I think nowadays it's even more likely that the benefits will even be higher than we have projected it within our simulations, where we do actually project what would be the entry of foreign investors into the markets of countries where we see this reduction, and what would be also the benefit for domestic investors, because all of those reforms, they would also affect and simplify the life of domestic investors as well, right? So that would be my answer. Thanks.
Thanks, Soraya. I'm going to ask if the panel would like to react to that question of how we get more investors involved, and also add a semicolon, how do we get more investment promotion agencies involved? Because this is a collaboration between the two sides, because there are opportunities to grow that collaboration. Before I turn to the panel, I just want to invite anybody to get ready to ask another question if they wish to do so. How do we get more investors involved? How do we get more investment promotion involved? Matthias and Philip.
Yes, thank you. I will expand a bit the question to how we get more private sector involved. And this is two ways. I think not only the investors, you said foreign investors, but also local investors. But at the end, the companies that will be the object of the investment, because this agreement is for development. So we want to make sure that we have medium and small size companies that can be in sectors that can link to global and regional markets, and that they can benefit for this. So I think that one of the main objectives of this, and the technology allows for that, is to have enough scale and scope in order to involve not only large tickets and really big investors, but also to have smaller tickets that are more suitable for other type of investments and more suitable for medium-sized companies or for emerging sectors, and to try to make sure that whatever we are putting in place in countries is also useful and is easy to use for these type of companies. And there, I think that investment promotion agencies play a very important role, because they could be a link and an interlocutor with these local companies to try to make sure that we put in place a system that is easy to use from outside for making investment, but it's also useful for a country and for the sectors that we want to promote, and that we want to make sure that will promote development and have larger numbers of medium-sized and companies involved in this sector.
Thank you, Matthias. If I just could make a quick comment. We at the World Economic Forum, we have many large companies that are our partners, But when we work on investment facilitation projects, we see that these projects benefit both multinationals, but also the domestic firms and also the SMEs, because often the SMEs are the suppliers to the multinationals when they enter a market. So actually a better investment climate is going to create more contracts, more opportunities for the SMEs and the domestic firms, not just the foreign investors that come into a market. There's a synergistic relationship there that I think you were starting to touch upon. Philip, you've been very patient.
No problem. I wanted to come back to the public or private investment question into investment facilitation tools and the AI and the technology and so on. What I can see happening, and it's already happening, and it just mimics an old concept, maybe in a new format, like how IPAs have used, especially in foreign markets, local hires to start generating leads and to utilize them in investment attraction. And if you think about the technology doing just that, plus XXX in a different way, a classic model of a public-private partnership, potentially in a project finance structure or in whatever structures where the private sector investor benefits from the upside that happens if and when those tools are implemented. Think about it, I help you build this AI tool for your IPA. Whatever lead you generate, instead of paying someone in a foreign market, which used to happen on Excel lists, for every lead you bring me, I'll pay you X. Now we pay on conversion. So as you bring me the investor, I'll pay you X on an MOU, I'll pay you Y on an LOI, and then it creates a win-win. Traditional public-private partnership, similar to a toll road, right? Like I have to build it first, and then I get paid by usage. Availability models, like the models are probably very versatile and flexible in terms of how we can use it. This is one way I can totally see investors coming in, both on the infrastructure side for digital, but as well as on the actual service delivery side. Maybe Andreas, you have an additional thought?
Yes, thank you. Also on the involvement of investment promotion agencies, I think that two angles. Of course, IPAs are so like a perfect link between investor and the government, but I think and they become increasing, the facilitators. But as Vice President Gonzalez, I'm sure, knows very well, they're just one piece within their government, of course. So internal coordination, that still remains a big challenge. And then, of course, capacity building from the broader community. I think that was mentioned as well. That's of course will be very helpful. And coming back to Soraya's, I think you implemented as well that for LDCs there's a big chance for that. Of course, there are some infrastructural issues that were already mentioned as well. But of course, IPAs there as well have a broad set of mandates so that for them it's already challenging. But I agree with you that it is a huge opportunity for them, and I think capacity building and support will be there very important. But also sort of like intergovernment coordination is very, very important there.
Thank you, Andreas. We're getting close to the end of our session, but if somebody from the audience has a burning question or comment, we welcome it. And after that, I will invite each of our panelists to provide a closing thought. Any last-minute comment? If not, we really appreciate that you've been with us today and that you've stayed with us for the duration of this session. I'm going to go the opposite way from the way we started. So we'll go from Soraya all the way to Andreas. Andreas will have the final word going forward. Soraya, please.
Thank you so much. In my final remark, I would like to address one of the questions regarding the technical assistance and needs assessments, right? So what should we provide? And that is the question we cannot answer like that, because each country has a very, very specific set of needs, And we've seen it from a couple of needs assessment that we did it as a pilot and focusing also on digital stuff. And in some cases they say, well, you're talking about digitalization, but we don't have even computers in our location that are not in the capital. So how can we digitalize when we don't have any computers? or no internet connection. But others are talking about also implementation very complex single Windows portals with including all of the agencies within the country, right? So the needs are very, very different. So that's why we need to go to each country that needs help and try to identify what exactly is needed to be able to help them and make the best fit for it. Thanks.
Thanks, Soraya.
Yes, thank you. For me, 2 points to close. The first one is that there is a lot of interest and that there is a lot of demand from the countries to have support in this area. And at the same time, there is a lot of replication of good examples of countries that are already progressing. So I think that is very encouraging and is a motivation for all of us to keep pushing forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthias.
Thank you very much, Matthew. I think I would probably like to end in saying that the IFDA has so much potential that I think countries should not wait for the WTO membership to take a decision on whether it is incorporated as part of the WTO or not. They should just go ahead and, as the slogan says, do it. Like our countries in Latin America, Ecuador, Barbados, Belize, Guyana, Honduras, because the reality is that this is so much in the interest of countries, particularly in a context of diminishing aid, diminishing investment. This can really help turn the point. So I would urge all countries to really move forward. And Matthew, let me recognize also the great work that you've been doing in the area of investment for quite some time now at the World Bank, at the WEF, and many other places. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Annabelle. I used to work for Annabelle, although she was many, many levels above me.
That is true. That is true. So I can speak to what I'm saying. I'm not fabricating it. Thank you.
Thank you, Annabelle. Philip, please.
Yeah, just 3 points that I mentioned earlier as well: trust, collaboration, technology. I think those three, and all of them are anchored in the IFD in one way or the other. So with those three, I think the unlock for FDI flows in general, but then also for the investor confidence and rebuilding some of the trust that we lost on the way will be critical, and IFD lays a good ground for that. So.
Then thank you for all your real-world examples, Philip. I think this brought it to life. Otherwise, it's very abstract sometimes, when we read the articles, but you actually brought it to the real world. Thanks. Andreas.
And then, I just can underline what the other panelists said. I think it makes the work much more efficient, much more effective, and I underline what Matthias said. There are good best practice examples already that can lead the way for others, and it makes the work easier, and it makes it for the investors easier, and ultimately it has a good and beneficial outcome.
Thank you to the panel. Maybe before closing, let me just recognize that this session was co-organized by Korea, Chile, Cambodia, the EU, ITC, the G20 Trade Investment Research Network, and the World Economic Forum. It shows great collaboration and partnership on this really important topic. Thank you for coming.